Oh, look at that, new Pokemon game. It's nice that Chikorita's getting some love again. Well, anyway, I'm gonna go back to playing Soul Silver. So yeah, a new Pokemon game based on X and Y is coming out this year, which gives me the perfect excuse to draw one of my favorite Pokemon, which, funnily enough, is from Kalos, and that's Sylveon. I mean, if you're trans and like Pokemon, it's kinda hard to hate this adorable ribbon puppy. But I've loved Sylveon before I came out because 1, pastel blue and pink with white is a good color combo regardless of any gendered connotations, and 2, Sylveon kicks major ass in Kalos and almost any region after Kalos. Like, okay, let me nerd out about Pokemon for a sec, but have you seen Sylveon's stats? It's super bulky in both HP and special defense, but it's also got great special attack. So Sylveon's only weaknesses are its speed and physical defense. But Sylveon gets access to Baby Doll Eyes, which kinda makes it easy to nullify any fast physical attackers since Baby Doll Eyes always goes first. It's as if the ability Intimidate was a move. Plus, if you misunderstood the way to evolve Sylveon and just maxed out its affection stat in Pokemon Me, like I did, then you'd have an indestructible monster to plow through all of Kalos. I think I've actually used a Sylveon in almost every game after it was introduced, assuming I could get my hands on one, because they're just a really reliable Pokemon since it's so bulky and its weaknesses are few and far between. I'd honestly be surprised if they didn't give Sylveon some kind of special treatment in the new game, considering Sylveon kind of served as the poster child for the new fairy typing during X and Y's initial trailers back in 2013. I anticipate they'll add fairy typing onto Chikorita's evolutionary line though, which is extremely baiting for people like me who love Meganium and the fairy typing in general. Though, if they just give Meganium a Mega Evolution and not a Regional Evolution like they did for Cyndaquil, then I'm gonna be a bit annoyed. The truth is, though, I'm not sure I'm gonna buy this game, and it's because of my disillusionment with Pokemon over the years. Well, no, it was the year 2019 when Dexit happened that made me take a step back and reevaluate my relationship to this brand. Because, there was no excuse for Dexit. After that, it felt like every new game came with a new flavor of disappointment. Like, beloved features kept getting taken out or changed to be unrecognizable. The games feel more and more like a slog to get through, assuming they don't glitch out entirely. Scarvi was a step in the right direction in certain parts, but I couldn't finish it because I got stuck in a cave and the textures mapped onto it made it so confusing to traverse that I couldn't be bothered to pick it up again. The additional glitches also aided in that decision since I was so irritated that a company could get away with this. This was probably the first time I didn't beat the Elite Four in a Pokemon game. So when people become disillusioned with a series, there's often that need to ask, was it ever good? Which is what I did. So I replayed some older games and I decided, yeah, these are better. I know it's kind of an in-joke within the Pokemon community that the game you think is the best is just the game you played as a kid for the first time. I'm also somewhat guilty of that, since I'd say Soul Silver is the best. But the thing is, I also think the games before Soul Silver were good too, and I don't have childhood nostalgia for those ones. I'm not going to give my take on every Pokemon game though. If you want to get an idea of my opinions on Pokemon, then I'd say watch this 6-hour video by CD Call and these videos by Giram Red. I agree with most of their conclusions on why newer Pokemon games aren't as good, which is that there's too much unskippable text, lackluster writing, poorly designed gameplay, and just overall less content, despite the price being almost $100 Canadian. In this failing, slowly sinking fascist economy, get the hell out of here, Game Freak. If I get Pokemon ZA, then I'm buying it secondhand several years after its release from someone who truly deserves my $40. However, I'm going to do a brief spotlight on Gen 3 because I think Gen 3 was really damn good. Hell, they tried to keep Gen 3's formula for at least 10 years afterwards. I think part of why Emerald, Ruby, and Sapphire worked so well to me, though, was because it felt like one of the last times Game Freak actually capitalized on the fact that Pokemon are animals, and thus made the theme of Hoenn centered around nature, aka land and sea, and I guess sky too. Sure, Gen 1 and 2 had a criminal organization centered on dogfighting, but the rest of the game doesn't really feel like it's hammering home a theme related to that. When it comes to Emerald, Ruby, and Sapphire, though, the themes of land and sea and sometimes sky mesh together so seamlessly because Pokemon live in the land and the sea, and they would be affected as much as the people would be if Maxie and Archie got their way. Additionally, the legendaries caused their respective climate disasters as a response to Maxie and Archie being incompetent, which wraps up into a classic theme of don't mess with nature because nature will bite you right back. Plus, the entire Hoenn region is packed with locations that really emphasize this importance of coexisting with nature, which is something you'll hear a lot if you watch any video essay on Hoenn games because it's just true. Sure, every Pokemon game has a token moment or a single town that's entire message is just, wow, isn't it great to coexist with Pokemon and nature? But it's rare when that gets to be more than just a token moment in modern Pokemon games nowadays. To switch gears, I'm going to talk about my ideal version of a Pokemon game, because I would want a Pokemon game that's more akin to a collab between Pokemon and Animal Crossing, where there's no bad guys or villains. Walking Pokemon would come back because obviously, except they'd be better implemented than in BDSP. Plus, I'd put more focus on things like contests and Pokemon and Me, maybe a Pokemon training facility that you help a recurring NPC to set up, like how you can help Tom Nook set up buildings in New Leaf and New Horizons. Although who's to say Game Freak would even be able to program that part properly? I'd also want like cute little daily events like holidays, which raise the encounter rates of certain Pokemon related to that holiday. Kind of like the Hoenn radio in Soul Silver. Like maybe there's like a Valentine's adjacent holiday in February about love, and for that whole day there's a raised chance of seeing fairy types or normal types or something. Or a holiday in October that raises the chances of seeing ghost types and dark types. I'd obviously still want the battles and the gyms and the Elite Four, but I just want more features that place more emphasis on you as the player interacting with your Pokemon and the world around you. I want a Pokemon game that captures the joy of watching the TV show and imagining yourself as a Pokemon trainer, where you're having your little slice of life story going from town to town and helping the people while you're there. Maybe there's still a minor side plot about the legendary, but it's not this huge climactic moment where you're forced to catch the legendary to prevent Pokemon Elon Musk from using nukes on everyone, or whatever the plot of Sword and Shield was. I mean, like, my hypothetical game here is basically how Soul Silver is structured already, and it's very beloved, so that's the base I'm working from here. The only major change I'd do is removing the evil team, and I feel like it'd be embarrassingly easy to remove Team Rocket from Johto's plot and lose almost nothing. Team Rocket isn't even remotely related to the legendary outside of the part in the remake where they give you the MacGuffin to summon Lugia or Ho-Oh, which tells me it's definitely possible to have a fun Pokemon game without an evil team. So yeah, that's what my dream Pokemon game would look like. Maybe it's unconventional, but I want a game like this because it would emphasize what I personally like about Pokemon, and that's the Pokemon themselves. Pokemon are fundamentally pets, specifically animals, but they're largely treated as pets in the games since the player character is always a human trainer. So becoming a Pokemon trainer at 10 is basically an escapist fantasy of taking your dog with you on your own hero's journey, and also your dog can breathe fire now. Sure, it might be a simplistic analysis, but think about how universal that is to anyone who's had a pet. A cat or a dog that lives over 15 years can be with you for a pretty significant portion of your life, and technically acts as your ally while you go through all the things that life offers. It's not hard to imagine a Pokemon in that place of a pet, since Pokemon are deliberately designed to resemble animals, in most cases. No shade to object Pokemon though, love those guys. The point is that I've always lived with pets because I love animals, go figure. So Pokemon fulfills a very endearing escapist fantasy for me and many others who have grown up with pets. One thing I also like about Pokemon is the environmentalist messages, even if they can be few and far between. Obviously the Hoenn games get this right, with people living in trees and volcanoes alongside Pokemon. It's hard to pick out other moments in other games, but I know they're there. I feel like there used to be this sentiment on the internet that environmentalist messages are lame, but in the last 7 years or so, I've seen that attitude fade away a bit as it's becoming clear how bad climate change can be when corporations run unchecked. So it makes sense why a big corpo like Game Freak would be hesitant to stuff their games with pro-environmentalist messaging. Oh well, the point is that environmentalist messages and kid stuff are always cool and always based. Also, let's be honest, the Pokemon art style does a serious amount of heavy lifting when it comes to the timeless appeal of Pokemon. The art style uses such a perfect balance of sharpness and roundness depending on the design. I also really like the design philosophy of just taking an element in nature or mythology and combining it with a real-life animal. It keeps Pokemon approachable and easy to understand for newcomers, since it's pretty easy to wrap your head around a mouse, but it can shoot electricity now. The use of unique silhouette is also a trait in the Pokemon art style that I low-key envy. The spectrum of unique Pokemon designs spans all the way from cute to cool to creepy to weird to ironic. The variety alone promises that there is a Pokemon out there for anyone, probably. If Pokemon's art style wasn't what it is, the franchise would not have succeeded, and I think that's something every Pokemon fan can admit. So, for the last few minutes, let's talk a little bit about the drawing. For starters, I wanted this piece to sort of be a companion piece to my Espeon Umbreon drawing I did a few months ago. So the things I kept were the simplistic background, the closed eyes on the Sylveons, and the Eevee being the center of the image. I could have made it more complicated, and in some ways I kind of wish I did, but I wanted it to be simple and serene to match with the other drawing. I mean, it's not like I'm much of a maximalist in my art anyway. One of the things that tripped me up about this drawing, though, was the light source. I didn't really know where it was at first. The moon is kind of a light source, but it's not really that bright. So I decided while shading that Eevee could be the light source, since it's a shiny one after all. I don't think shinies glow that much in the games, but that's what artistic liberties are for. It just adds a lot more flair with the sparkles and the water reflection. Also, I fully encourage reading as much trans symbolism into this drawing as you want. In fact, I demand it. So, there we go. Another day of drawing and yapping completed. This was a nice drawing to work on. I don't feel like I really stepped out of my comfort zone, but it came out nice, I think. Let me know what you think. I'll be posting the drawing on my socials link below, so you can comment on it, share it, or crumble it into a ball and play fetch with your dog. Anyway, subscribe or don't.